Good morning, everyone. My name is Sterling Higa, Chairperson of the Authority. I'd now like to call to order the June 3rd, 2026 Kaka'ako meeting of the Hawaii Community Development Authority. The time is now 9 a.m.
Thank you, Chair. In accordance with Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, the Hawaii Community Development Authority is holding today's Kaka'ako board meeting virtually on Zoom. The Zoom link details were included on the meeting agenda. Therefore, members of the public are welcome to join us on Zoom and also at our physical meeting site at the American Brewery Building, 547 Queen Street, second floor, boardroom, Honolulu, Hawaii, 96813. The HCDA communications staff is hosting this meeting. Once this meeting begins, everyone will be muted for clear audio. Board members, if you have any comments or questions, please unmute yourself to speak. It is important that all individuals clearly state their name, pseudonym, or other identifier name each time prior to speaking. If you wish to provide oral testimony and you are attending virtually, please indicate so by clicking the raise hand button found on your Zoom screen. If you're attending in person, you'll be called to the front of the room in the order that you signed up. Before you begin your testimony, we ask that you identify yourself and spell your name for the record. Your testimony must be related to an item on the agenda. All testimony will be limited to a maximum of 3 minutes. When time has elapsed, time will be called out, after which you will have 30 seconds to conclude your testimony, and then your audio will be turned off. If you're attending in person, the presiding officer will call the next testifier. Keep in mind that this is an opportunity to share your thoughts with us. If you ask questions during your testimony, neither the board nor the staff is required to provide an answer. If the authority's connection for the remote meeting is lost, the meeting will be recessed until the connection is restored. If the connection cannot be restored within 30 minutes, the meeting will be terminated and the authority will continue the meeting at another notice date. Thank you. Chair.
Thank you. HCDA board members, please remain visible and audible during the meeting. Also, please acknowledge you're present by either saying here or present. Let the record reflect that the following members are present. Vice Chair Ishii.
Here.
Thank you. Secretary Ledstone.
Here.
Thank you. Member Miranda Johnson.
Here.
Thank you. I'm going to mark Member Anderson as excused. Member Wicker is here and is joining the meeting right now. Member Streitz.
Here.
Thank you. Member China.
Here.
Thank you. And Member Sakota.
Yeah.
We have quorum, Chair.
Thank you. For today's meeting, board members will have an opportunity to ask questions or provide comments after an agenda item has been presented. Individuals from the public who have requested to provide verbal public testimony are on standby and will be permitted to provide their testimony when their specific agenda item is called. Agenda item number 2 is the approval of minutes. These are the regular meeting minutes of May 6th, 2026. Board members, are there any comments or corrections to these minutes? Seeing none, the minutes are approved as presented. Agenda item number 3 is for information and discussion. The first is a presentation by the Honolulu Authority for Rapid Transportation on updates on the Honolulu Rail Transit Project, including the design of the Pulaloia Downtown and Kaka'ako Kukui Civic Center Skyline rail stations, updates to the guideway design, construction schedules, historic preservation, mitigation, extension planning, including the Kukulua'e'o Kaka'ako Station, and plans for consultation pursuant to Chapter 206E-13 Hawaii Revised Statutes. Mr. Ryan Tam, Director of Planning and Development, will now introduce the presenter. Mr. Ryan Tam.
Thank you. Good morning, Chair Higa and board members. Thank you. I actually would like to introduce Mr. Vansuda, who is the project director on behalf of HART, and he has a presentation.
Thank you. Good morning, Mr. Suda.
Good morning.
Morning, Chair, board members. Vansuda, HART Project Director. Yes, it's the presentation just to give you kind of an update as to where the project is and all the items you mentioned throughout the presentation. It's quite lengthy in terms of slides, so I'll try to go quickly and provide some time for questions if there are any. So just a very quick high-level overview of the entire project. 19 miles, 19 stations, goes from East Kapolei to the Civic Center station, which I'll talk through here shortly. It stops at major destinations such as the University of Hawaii, West Oahu, Leeward Community College, Joint Base Pearl Harbor Hickam Airport, and the Kalihi Transit Center. So future planning, recently unsolicited by HARD, City Council approved or put forth a bill, Bill 60 for authorizing HART to plan, design, and construct beyond the current full funding grant agreement or the project as I described in the previous slide. That authorizes HART to do so, but it doesn't provide funding, unfortunately. Currently, we are in discussions with stakeholders on funding and opportunities to begin the planning, design, construction of the extensions. Obviously, we need to get to Ala Moana, which is part of the original scope, but also, you know, further west and further east towards UH Manoa, if possible. Just want to highlight here in the current city center guideway and stations contract, the last contract for the 3 miles and 6 stations, there is options within the contract to allow the contractor to design all the way to Ala Moana, guideway and stations. We also have an option in that contract to have them do the construction, although fortunately we don't have the funding, so we can't do so. We did exercise the first option for design, but we did not release full notice to proceed to expend on that. We did release a limited notice to proceed for some conceptual planning design for that extension to Ala Moana. We do have some funds at the end of the project, very little funds that only gets us, you know, a portion of the design. So we're working with the contractor in terms of that. They're also doing some geotech boring just to help some of the preliminary design aspects needed. Until we get additional funding, we can't really extend or exercise the full option or full notice to proceed on those options. The next item's forecast of project funding. I'm not going to go into too much detail. I know there's a lot of information here on this slide. I think the key points here is HART is 100% taxpayer funded. You can see there on the left and on the right how much funding we get from local funds, about 83%, and then the 17% federal funds. As I mentioned previously, the full funding grant agreement, which is the agreement with the Federal Transit Administration, which provides $1.55 billion. That's for the current scope. Initially, it was for the entire scope from East Kapolei to Ala Moana. About 5 years ago, we went through a recovery plan and an amended full funding grant agreement, which truncated the scope but did not penalize on the funding from the feds. So that original 1.55 was from the original scope of the project. A little more detail in terms of segment 3. Currently, we are working through utility relocation, the downtown or the city center utility relocation 3 contract. They've completed all physical work. We are currently working to close out that contract and issue substantial completion, working through some as-built drawings. So this covered from the Kaka'ako substation through Nimitz and through Halakawila area. So a lot of that work you've seen ongoing in that area in terms of utility relocation is all done. The Dillingham area, so this is throughout the entire Dillingham, all the way to Kahi substation. That work is currently ongoing. If you've been down that area and driven that area, you can see all the thousands of cones through that area for all the utility relocation, all the overhead lines going from overhead to underground, making room for the future locations of the columns that will support the guideway structure. We recently turned over the first portion of Dillingham, so from the Middle Street Transit Center to about Pu'uhale to the City Center Guideway Station contractor, the CCGS contractor. You saw a change in the maintenance of traffic from cones to more of a hard barrier concrete K-rails that are out there. That contractor has mobilized in that area and started drilling shafts for the supports for the columns that will support the guideway. The utility relocation, we're looking at turning over the next section from Pu'uhale to Waikimilo, with the exception of the Kalihi intersection. So if you've been there in the last couple of weeks, major change and difference in what's overhead. A lot of the overhead lines have come down. We removed some of the wooden utility poles last week, finished all of that area with some minor punch lists, but that maintenance of traffic that you see from Middle Street to Puahale will soon be extended all the way through Waikimilo. So, you know, the left turns, even with the cones, weren't allowed on Dillingham, although some people were illegally turning left. You won't be able to do that anymore because of the hard barriers. You know, you can't just go and move cones out there. So some of that's about to change here shortly. The contractors working through their maintenance of traffic plans. Once approved, then they'll begin to implement. The utility relocation, so from that remaining portion of Waikimilo to Kahi, we're still working through the large 138 kV HECO overhead lines to underground. We're expecting to have that completed by the end of this year. City Center Guideway and Station CCGS, as I mentioned, they moved in part of Dillingham. This is the 3 miles and 6 stations. You can see there on the right, there's a map of that. The anticipated completion of all of the construction portion, so the guideway, the stations, the hard concrete, you know, physical structure is expected to be completed in 2030. After that, we do the similar things that we've done on segment 1 and segment 2, where the systems contractor comes in, installs all of their equipment, does all the testing, and then we have to do what's called trial operations, where we simulate, you know, the system as if it was running in revenue service, and then safety certify the system before we turn it over to Department of Transportation Services. So that's anticipated currently in our schedule to be completed in the summer of 2031. One thing to note here, and I talked through the finances earlier, the project itself will be fully paid off by the time we're complete. So the current scope and the current timeline, the entire project will be fully paid off. Just wanted to give you some visuals of some of the utility work that's ongoing. The photo on the left is a micro tunnel, 4-foot tunnel that goes under the Kapalama Canal. So from Koho to Kokea, they're about 30 feet down. A tunnel that goes right under the canal to carry these conduits for HECO lines, some communication lines, all under the canal. Part of the utility relocation from taking overhead to underground. That center picture there is some of the 138 kV utility poles that were installed. And then on the right there, some of the flat works, paving, intersections, restoring some of the curbs, sidewalks, ramps, and things like that at the intersection. So CCGS, City Center Guideway and Station progress. Currently, we have 24 guideway column shafts completed to date. The first guideway column was completed in March. We did a press release there. Since then, we have 4 total columns completed. If you drive along Nimitz, you can see some there. At the Evile substation area, there's an additional column there. I mentioned some of this in terms of the traffic control plans or maintenance of traffic that you see on Nimitz, and then also on Dillingham that's soon to change with the transition there. The Chinatown station construction started. They're wrapping up some of the piles or the foundation supports for the station itself. The contractor is moving to Kapalama Station here shortly. They're right now mobilizing and will begin that foundation pile work there. Halikuwila, we recently got our supplemental archaeological inventory survey completed and approved by Shifty and the Oahu Beara Council. So that opens up that area to begin work. Right now, we're starting some potholing, some investigative work for where the columns are going to be located. So our contractors there currently working day and nights, mostly at night currently, to do their investigation. Then we'll have some minor utility relocation, some unforeseen items, such as the water line, irrigation lines that need to be completed. And then the CCGS contractor will move in there shortly thereafter, provide some further details as what we expect. Probably be a good time to mention, you know, the contractor is currently working on their maintenance of traffic through that area. It's a very tight area. Halikuwila, starting from, you know, the Nimitz area all the way through Cook Street. The contractor, if you've seen some of the equipment that's on Nimitz, very large equipment, cranes, the drill rigs, and have some photos to show you here shortly. So it'll require kind of half block closures in that area. So it'd be very disruptive to some of the businesses and tenants in that area. We do plan to start outreach later this month. We're gonna have a community meeting and get the word out there of what's coming, and then also meet individually with business owners, tenants, property owners, just to give them details as to what's coming and how we can work with them. So just want to put that out there that that's going to be happening later this month. Then we're expecting the first guideway span installation in the first half of 2027. There's some photos I talked about. On the left, there is activities for drilling the shafts that support the columns that will then support the guideway. These shafts vary from 75 feet to 250 feet, depending on location and the area. They're about 8 to 10 feet in diameter, so very large shafts. That cylindrical, steel casing that you see there is what goes down into the shaft as they dig the shaft. Supports, the earth around it, and they put in the steel cage shown there on the right. So they drop that steel cage in there, and then they pour concrete, which then becomes a shaft that supports the column. The picture there in the center is some of the rebar cages for the station support piles. So this is within the Chinatown station there. A little smaller than what's in the guideway. There's more of those that support the station. So going on to some of the station renderings, just want to note that these are, preliminary. Right now, the contractor is about 75 to 90%, depending on the station. So some of these may change slightly, but just to give you kind of an idea of the station designs and where we're at. The first one on the left there is the Kalihi station. Some things to note here that look very different from segment 1 and 2. The canopies on the platform, rather than that pencil fabric stressed canopies, we have more of a traditional roofing metal type covering for the platforms. Same percentage of covering that we have in segment 2, but different material. What we've noticed with the tensile fabric canopies, they're very difficult to maintain. They require special equipment, special type of rigging in order for employees to go up there and maintain. So in discussion with DTS, we moved away from those canopies and went with more of a traditional type roofing. The other thing to note, the guideway structure, you can kind of see that there where the columns are, that hammerhead or that T kind of structure that supports the guideway. In segment 1 and segment 2, we have a tangential box girder type guideway where there's a cavity in the middle. Moving forward for this segment, we have more of a I-beam girder, very similar to bridge construction. If you're driving under the Nimitz Viaduct, you can see above you those I-beam girders. So very traditional bridge looking structure. Very different from what is in segment 1 and segment 2, which I think most people will quickly identify. But overall, color, I think size and mass will be about the same. Some of those hammerheads that I mentioned may be a little bit larger, but visually, I don't think the average person will know or will tell. The other change is the station entrance there, very similar to the platform canopies. We went with the traditional type structure. On the right there is the Honolulu Community College station. So this is at the corner of Kokea and Dillingham, right next to the college. So the next set of photos we have here is the Iwilei station. Working very closely with the other city departments with the development that's happening there. So ensuring that the station does not preclude future tie-ins, talking with the other city departments, making sure like their plans are to obviously build TOD and development. So there's opportunity for a bridge to come in and connect into the station, whether it's at the platform level or concourse level. We allow that modification to occur in the future when that development does occur. So working very closely with the other departments, ensuring that we can accommodate those things. On the right there is the Chinatown station, located at the corner of Kaka'ako and Nimitz Highway. A very unique design and station configuration here. The photo shows the station landing on the Mauka side. On the Mackay side, there is no landing. The station actually kind of hovers over the Nimitz Highway area. So some unique engineering and construction concepts there that we're working on. Then we have the downtown station shown there. This is at the corner of Bishop and Nimitz Highway. And then the Civic Center station. I'll quickly go through this slide because I have further detailed slides on these two stations. So the downtown station, the Malka landing is located between the Dillingham Transportation Building and the Pacific Guardian Center. And then the Mackay side is located right at the corner of that Hiko property, Bishop Street and Nimitz Highway. Right now, we are looking at prepping that site. The Mackay side has already been prepped. The Malka side, we're planning and mobilizing to start next month to get that station ready to start construction. The guideway shafts are expected to start in August of this year and finish in October, right when they plan to start doing some of the station foundations. So very shortly, you'll see some activity there. That guideway shafts, once they start there, they'll move in an east direction, so towards Halakawila Street, and that's when I mentioned, you'll see a lot of the half block closures in that area, and it'll move from that east to west manner along Halakawila. So kind of a bird's eye view of the station and renderings. You can see there, I talked about the Mauka entrance, the Mackay entrance, the station or the platform itself is right above Nimitz Highway. So you would enter either the Mauka or the Mackay part of the station, go up to the middle where Nimitz Highway, just under the guideway, is where you would pay your fares or buy your tickets. And then you would head up to the platform, either going to the left or to the right, whichever direction you're planning to go. You can kind of see there the change in the roofing, although it's hard to see. But you don't see the traditional canopies that we've seen on segment 1 and segment 2. Of course, all the stations have ADA access, so elevators to and from, whether it's the ground level to the station platform, meeting all the ADA requirements. Just wanted to highlight some details in the station in terms of some of the mitigations or things related to the cultural history with the area. So with this station, some of the paving takes into account the cultural history, and don't ask me what it is exactly, but we've done extensive research in terms of the area, the surroundings, what was there previously, the history of the area, and incorporated those into the design. So some of the preliminary designs here in terms of some of the paving, which takes into account those cultural and historical features. Civic Center Station. So the Civic Center Station located between South Street and Keawe Street, formerly the Servco property, and then next to Keaho. So the Malka side of the station, Mackay side of the station, the entrance will only be at the Mackay side. So you would enter on the Mackay side, head up to the concourse level, and cross over to the other side if you want to go in the other direction. But there is no entrance on the Malka side, the Servco side. You can kind of see here, there is potential for expandability on the Malka side of the station. The elevator shaft does go from the platform level all the way to the ground level, although the elevator will only be programmed to go from concourse to platform. On the Mackay side, the entrance there, you can kind of see at the bottom, that's where you would enter the station, pay your fares, and then walk up to either the concourse or up to the platform level. And as like the other stations, ADA compliant, will have elevators to the ground floor all the way up to the platform.
Sure. Thank you.
Yes, please.
Yeah, so while you're on the Civic Center station site, I heard that for the guideway supports for coming down Halekowila, it was gonna be kind of straddle on both sides. But I also heard that they might be shifting the design to a single support. Is that true or?
No, you're right, and thanks for pointing that out. So all the supports on Halekowila, maybe with the exception of the far west end of Halekowila and the far east end of Halekowila, will be straddle vents. And that was some of the optimizations that we've done previously during the design phase, right before or during the utility relocation. So there's a large eco infrastructure at in the center of Halekowila. And to avoid that, we went with the straddle bends. At every station, you'll see kind of that straddle bend, so columns on two sides of the street, to support the station structure itself.
And sorry, Chair, one more question. For the Servco site, what are your immediate, plans for and for next steps for the Servco site?
Yeah, so once we get access to that site, the first thing we'll do is demolition of that building that's on Halekowila side. That building kind of impacts the construction and finally the overall structure of the station. So we'll demo the building and then the contractor will move in. Most likely use the area for some storage and laydown before they actually start constructing the station there. They've begun on the Mackay side, on the Keoho side, they did some load test shafts there, which helped finalize their design in terms of depths of columns, methodology of those columns. They've got some equipment there, so they're mobilized there until they actually go through that area for the column and shaft construction. Most likely they'll just use it as laydown and then maybe some site prep for the station construction.
Okay, and then, so just to be clear, the acquisition is limited to the buildings that were being used by Servco for the repair days.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
And the rest of the site is still gonna remain owned by Servco.
Correct.
Thanks, Spence.
So the next one, just highlighting cultural paving, again, taking the historical area, the culture in that area and implementing it to the design and the paving that will be implemented at this station. So we've done a number of neighborhood design workshops and hopefully people here and others had an opportunity to come and participate. We did 2 workshops per station. We've completed 5 of the 6 stations. So the first workshop we presented, very preliminary 30% designs, looking for input from the community in terms of the touch and feel of the station. So whether it's color, landscaping, some of those architectural features we provided. After the initial workshop, we provided options for the community and neighborhood to vote on. And we did have really good turnout in terms of the community coming out, providing input. We took all of their comments and voting and we implemented into the stations. You can see some of that implemented there. Chinatown, we have a few more mitigations or implementation from that neighborhood design workshop. The last design workshop we have is for the downtown station, which is going to be held on June 10th. I believe it's at the Aloha Tower. If you are not subscribed to our email, please do so at honolulutransit.org. You can get the information there, and that will be our last workshop for the station designs. So just wanted to touch on some of the historic preservation mitigation, historic American building surveys, which we've completed. You can see the list here. I'm not going to go through all of them, but we completed all the documentation for that. All the documentation will be transmitted to the Prints and Photographs Division of the Library of Congress, which will then be accessible through the library. And lastly, continuing on the historic preservation and mitigation, we did some supplemental mitigation commitments, or this is upcoming, I'm sorry, National Register nomination. So these buildings here, based on our environmental reevaluation and our programmatic agreement, these buildings here will go on the National Register. So we're working through the documentation on that, and we'll be submitting here shortly. And that's, I think that's the last one. As mentioned, HonoluluTransit.org, and the final workshop for the downtown station. We also will be announcing the community meeting for the Halakawila area. I believe we're scheduled for later this month, just to make sure the community in the area around Halakawila is aware of that upcoming maintenance of traffic, half block closures, and then we will then go and meet with individuals just to make sure that they're aware, and give them any details, answer any questions. And that's all I have.
Thank you, Vince.
Thank you, Mr. Suda. Members, any comments or questions for the presenter? Seeing none, we will go to public testimony time. Do we have any persons pre-signed up for testimony? Any present or online who wish to provide testimony on this agenda item? Seeing none, we will close public testimony. That was for information only. Oh, sorry, Member Sakota, your question.
Okay. Hi, good morning. Can you give me just some sense of the infrastructure capacity that's being built or planned for going forward? Like just in terms of electricity, I see sort of the HECO conduits going in on some of your pictures, but it kind of makes me think about all the power outages experienced across the island during the recent storms, and sort of what kind of capacity is being built into these systems, for the future, being that it'll be late or early 2030s when this is done. So can you give us any kind of sense of that in terms of infrastructure planning and capacity?
Yeah, I can touch on some of that just based on, the designs and what HECO, just taking HECO, for example, has approved. Obviously when infrastructure is overhead, it's pretty accessible and easy to get to, in the event something were to occur. Putting it underground obviously hardens that, you have less risk of wind damage or something falling online. So that does harden the system. Working with HECO, they have requirements for spare infrastructure. Like that micro tunnel, for example, we put in the infrastructure required to relocate the lines, but also additional infrastructure, say in the future, HECO needs to pull an additional line or they have issues with that 138 kV cables. So working with HECO, some of that spare capacity is put in terms of, additional capacity that's beyond our responsibility. So that's something, HECO would have to address, but spare capacity in terms of what's going in underground, especially under that canal. You don't want to go in twice to dig down 35 feet on each side and put a 4-foot tunnel, but that's pretty much all that we're doing.
Great. Member Sakota, is that good?
Yes, thank you.
Thank you. We'll go to Secretary Litson and then Ms. Purvis. I don't know if we can actually take your question if you have one, since it's for board members, but Secretary Litson.
Mahalo. On that same line of questioning with the electricity, if I were a kupuna on, let's say, a wheelchair or just difficulty walking, and I'm riding in the rail and the electricity goes down and I can't take the elevator down, what happens? Like, how does that kupuna get down if they're unable to use the stairs?
Yeah, good question. And I'm going to try my best. This is more of a operational procedure, which DTS is responsible for. But in those situations, either the train, depending on how that situation is worked out, if it's just a power outage at a station, for example, that train would go to the adjacent station that has power. You will then, exit that station. DTS will set up a bus bridge to get you back to the station without power. If it is a power outage that affects both the guideway and the station, we do exercises with the emergency services, whether it's the fire department or emergency management services, EMS, where they have the ability to evacuate people off of the guideway and the station. There's a requirement that we do an annual emergency exercise. I think last year we did one at the airport station where we had a situation such as, a derailment where, whether you have injured people or capable people to still walk down, evacuating them from the guideway and have that ability and capability to do so.
Thank you. And one last question, restrooms, will there be restrooms in these rail stations?
So every station has restrooms built into them. They are secured restrooms. They do require access key to them. So you do have to go and find a station attendant to allow you to get into the restroom. And that's a policy that DTS has put into place.
Thank you, Secretary Lidstone. So Mrs. Purvis, we are able to recognize you as a testifier. You're welcome to testify for up to 3 minutes if you'd still like to.
Thank you so much. I know I have my presentation coming up, but the question is around the 550 Halekawila building, which is the object of our presentation. And I noticed the intention to place that on the National Historic Registry. And so I am asking, what is your time frame for placing it on the Historic Registry?
I'm not sure where we are in the process. If I can get your contact information, we can get back to you and provide you an update as to the time frame.
We can have staff put you two in contact via email.
Thank you so much.
Thank you. Okay, any other board member comments or questions? Seeing none, we've already done public testimony. This was for information only, so we'll thank Mr. Suda for his presentation. And we'll go now to the next presentation, which is by the Department of Human Services Statewide Office on Homelessness and Housing Solutions regarding their plans to develop a Kauhale project to house up to 45 homeless adults with supportive services located at 550 Halekawila Street, Honolulu, Hawaii 96813 in Kaka'ako. And just for the record, Member Anderson joined the meeting at 9:05 a.m. And now Ms. Lindsay Doi, Asset Manager, will introduce the presenter.
Good morning, members. As you just saw, Ms. Raina Purvis is here to discuss this action item and to present. She's from the Statewide Office of Homelessness and Housing Solutions. And they'd like to come to you for an informational update regarding their plans for 550 Halekawila Street to build a Kauhale project. So Raina, if you'd like to start your presentation.
Well, thank you very much. I'm doing my best today to stand in both for June Yang and Emma Grochowski from our team, who are both unable to join today. So we will go through a few slides and then hopefully have time for questions and answers. So as you mentioned, Lindsay, I'm with SOHHS here at the state capitol, and we are looking to develop a Kauhale in Kaka'ako at 550 Halekawila. We were established as an agent or as a separate office as part of the Gov's homelessness initiative back in 2022. Prior to that, there had been some semblance of our office that served mostly as a policy group. And now we are charged with implementing the Kauhale initiative across the state, as well as innovation around housing solutions. We work to identify the gaps in the homeless services system. We work very closely with legislature and the governor's office and community groups. We have numerous nonprofit partners who provide a variety of services for unsheltered persons who enter into the Kauhale. And then the other main charge is coordinating the Hawaii Interagency Council on Homelessness. We meet quarterly, and That is a group of department heads and agency representatives and legislative bodies that is focused only on how do we resolve some of the key homelessness issues that we face as a state. The Kauhale Initiative, there's been good press, there's been not so good press over the last number of years, but it is a semi-independent community. And it can be in a tiny home village like you might see at Alana Olopono down in Iwilei, or it might be in a pre-existing building. Uh, Such as the Iwilei Center, where we went into the warehouse and put into Kauhale. And then also we're looking at a similar enterprise at 550 Halekawila. The nonprofit provider provides all of the support services to accommodate the needs of the specific populations that we serve, and hopefully preventing returns to homelessness. So one of our key priorities is to reduce the number of unsheltered homeless. And as I think many of you know, we have the point in time count that happens hopefully every year. That gives us a snapshot of both the sheltered and unsheltered homeless numbers across the state. It also allows us to work to reduce the number of emergency services. You might be aware of the Ala Medical Respite, also down in the Iwilei area, and that location serves medically acute unsheltered individuals, thus helping them avoid costly emergency room visits. We are also involved in mental health support, which can also decrease the number of incarcerations because we're able to, through our providers, to deal with substance use issues and getting people back on their mental health medications and seeing some significant success in those arenas. The thing that has really also encouraged us is the sense of community that comes from being able to be together, have some self-efficacy, some self-governance. The Middle Street location, Ho'okahileo, is a prime example, one of our earlier tiny home villages, and that group is almost completely self-governing, and the service provider has stepped back and is just really providing those support services. This is a recent photo of a Kauhale structure out at what used to be called the Weinberg Village in Waimanalo. And we're excited that this has opened. We had the blessing last week, and it does provide a stable environment. It's safe, it's inclusive, and folks in the Waimanalo area are being onboarded into the Kauhale as we speak. And then homelessness in urban Honolulu, I mentioned recently the point in time count. These are just a few statistics. We have seen an almost 20% decrease in unsheltered homelessness since 2 years ago, when the last point in time count was conducted. And you'll notice that it's the first decrease in unsheltered homelessness since 2018, and a 20% decrease is significant. You can see the inability to pay rent, substance use were two of the higher reported causes of homelessness, and unsheltered households tend to be single adults or adult-only households, and a lot of that is dependent on how families are activated to join or to be allowed into other types of shelter services. And now, the reason I asked the question that I did earlier, we are in a lease with the 550 Halakawila building. I did not realize it was the Tani building. We refer to it as the lawyer's building, and very much concerned as to what the development across or along Halakawila might mean for this. So we are hoping, intending to look at a residential, a renovation that provides residential rooms, community spaces for a kahale in that building. And you can see, it's an adaptive reuse of the existing building, shared cooking and sanitary facilities. And right now, we are working on a partnership with the Department of Law Enforcement to have a dispatch station there, which we believe would certainly provide added layers of safety and security for the building and for the residents. So we're looking at up to 45 adults. We would have a program service delivery operator staffing. They would be providing the support services, as I've mentioned in other sites, and would be there 24/7 to manage the residents and the operations for that. And we do have in all of our kahale varying sets of values. Some of our kahale are low barrier, and some of our kahale are high barrier in terms of who is able to join. This one is intended to be a kind of a mid-range. They have to be willing to participate in the support services. This is not a place where someone can just come in and be there and do anything they want. And it's also a dry facility, so no drug or alcohol use on site. That could result in being asked to leave the kahale. And you see also the loitering, panhandling, the disturbances. We're hoping to mitigate that significantly given the area and the community that we would be working with, and all of the businesses in that area as well as other residents. So the goal is that they're able to live in community and then build the capacity to live on their own eventually. And we are looking at, we have their request for bid that has being developed and will go out very shortly here in June. Depending on the results of the request for bid, what information we get, a decision will be made, and hopefully renovations and site prep will start later this summer, July, maybe August. We are also anticipating sometime in January or February of 27, a soft opening, and then full on services would be begin in March of 27. These could be extended given the hoped for success or anticipated success of the program, and also available funding from the state. And on behalf of Jun Yang, our coordinator for homelessness and housing solutions here at SOHHS, that is our presentation on the 550 Halakawila building, and I am more than happy to take questions if anyone has them. Thank you.
Thank you, Reina. Members, any comments or questions? Member Strites.
Thanks, Chair, and thanks for that presentation. I was just curious if those kahale locations are only intended to be like temporary sites. I saw that the one that you just presented about in Kaka'ako was 3 years, it looked like. Is that a typical stay for like a return on investment for rehabbing and prepping? Or do you have any sites that are also in like permanent locations and like integrated in there?
Yeah, great question. There's been a lot of development of the concept of kahale. And there are reasons that we classify them as temporary, even though they can be long-term temporary. A lot of it has to do with our residents and their qualification for permanent supportive housing vouchers eventually, if that's their goal. And if we classify them as permanent, then they lose their chronicity of homelessness in the HUD system. And so they lose the opportunity. They go back to the back of the line for any sort of permanent supportive housing vouchers. And so we're trying to walk the fine line of providing services, many of them longer term, yet not decreasing their chronicity index and precluding them being able to join into a permanent supportive housing situation should the vouchers come through. Some of our locations have very specific graduation timelines. Some of them are more long-term and don't have a definitive end date. So you will see a variety of I guess, stays, lengths of stays at the various kauhale. And the one here in Halekauila is destined or anticipated to have that 2 to 3 year stay with the premise of support services, that there would be job training, encouragement to actually secure employment, and then through that, a savings plan so that at the time of graduation, many of these folks will have their medications made right, they will have mental health treatment opportunities, they'll have job placements, and then they'll have the savings for which to move out with, especially when and if the permanent supportive housing vouchers come along, or even if they do not have enough funding to actually start to get into a place of their own.
Okay, so just to make sure I understood, the limited time frame is related to the inhabitants or the physical like occupation of the space?
We are currently in a 5-year lease for the facility. And at least until that lease is up, we will continue to operate the program. The 2 to 3 year window is more for residents and how long they will stay in the program, and is separate from the length of time that we will be able to inhabit the building itself.
Okay, so that's more just lease driven than anything.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, thanks.
Yep.
Thank you, Member Strikes. Members, any other comments or questions for Raina? Seeing none, we will move to public testimony. Do we have any persons pre-signed up to provide testimony?
None, Chair.
Do we have any present or online wishing to provide testimony on this item?
None, Chair. Does that make sense?
Okay. Seeing none, we will move to close public testimony and open up more questions or comments from board members. Any? Seeing none, we will thank Raina for your time.
Thank you.
And
Thank you
move
very
to
much.
the next agenda item. Thank you. The next agenda item is an update by HCDA staff on the progress of transferring HCDA's remnant road parcels in Kaka'ako, Mauka to the City and County of Honolulu. Ms. Lindsay Doi, Asset Manager, and Mr. Garrett Sasaki, Chief Financial Officer, will now provide the update.
Good morning, members. We just wanted to bring you a brief update as to our efforts to transfer those remnant roads. You may remember we started this effort actually in the fall of 2025. We met with various city agencies, the managing director, to talk about these 54 road remnants that were actually created back when HCDA did all of those infrastructure ID projects. So many of these remnants, they're very small. Some are actually larger portions, like a portion of Queen Street, half of Mother Waldron Park. But all of these remnants are items that we feel are better housed with the city. The city has those services that can maintain them. And in the case of Mother Waldron Park, you know, they can actually utilize them if they own the fee, and they can do their programming as they currently do. So we had a series of meetings with the city, specifically with DDC, and we went back and forth about these various parcels, what parcels may need certain items to make them ready for transfer, which parcels are actually ready for transfer. So after those meetings, we came up with a list of 34 of those parcels being ready for transfer, meaning the city agrees that they are in a condition that they would accept. And then there's a list of about 14 that do need some extra items such as surveys, title reports. There's one that needs subdivision, and then there's about 5 that the city feels are inconclusive at this time, just because either they have encroachments that will be cleared with future developments, or other landscape encroachments that you know, they need to figure out. But the takeaway is that 34 are ready for transfer. So we are working on a memorandum of agreement with the city to memorialize all of this, and to get their, I guess, agreement moving forward with the transfer. We anticipate doing this perhaps in phases. You know, if the 34 they're ready to take now, we could potentially do those first, and then maybe work on the others, you know, later. Or if we can get the survey and title reports quickly, perhaps we can bundle those together and then wait on the development for those 5 that they're kind of looking into. But we did want to just bring this to you again, since it has been a long time. Actually, I think we first discussed this back in 2018 with the Mackay land transfer. So it is something we are still actively working on, and hopefully this year we may see some movement of at least some of them.
Thank you. Members, any comments or questions? All right, seeing none, we'll move to public testimony. Anyone pre-signed up to testify? Anyone present or online wishing to provide testimony on this agenda item? I'll just make a brief comment. Thank you to you and the staff for continuing to push this forward. And I pray that with the collaboration of Mayor Blangiardi's administration, we'll be able to get this done during his term in office. Thank you.
Chair, want to echo that.
Yeah.
Staff.
Yeah, big kudos to Ryan's team.
Ryan and his team for sorting through all those parcels, working with the various city departments.
Yeah.
So a great effort.
Yeah, thanks to the staff, thanks to the county. All right. We'll move to the final agenda item, which is the report of the executive director. This is the monthly report and other status reports, including approved permit applications that did not require HRS 206E-5.6 public hearings. Executive Director Nakamoto will now provide his monthly report.
So Chair and board members, the executive director report is at tab 5 of in your packet. Just want to point out one license agreement, a 1-year license agreement that we entered into with Ikaika Hawaii Watermen's Academy. They are a nonprofit organization that's dedicated to perpetuating Hawaiian water sports. They lost their location at Ala Moana Beach Park. So we are licensing to them the space in Wallow Basin, kind of next to Ala Moana Park, near the restroom, on a 1-year basis to kind of set up for the summer. I think so far it's been a great collaboration. It's a worthy cause, and it activates that area. Thank you, Chair.
Great. Thank you, Director Nakamoto. Members, comments or questions for Director Nakamoto on the report? Seeing none, we will go to public testimony. We have one person pre-signed up to testify. That's Mr. Todd Adams.
Thank you.
Mr. Todd Adams, please identify yourself for the record and limit your testimony to no more than 3 minutes.
Todd Adams. Good morning, Chair, members of the board, and HCDA staff. Since moving into Ulana Ward Village in November 2025, I have documented my observations and raised questions regarding approved building system performance, the assumptions underlying project approval, and the practical difficulties associated with obtaining meaningful independent evaluation. Could HCDA clarify what actions, if any, it can take when questions arise regarding whether approved building systems continue to perform consistently with the assumptions underlying project approval? Additionally, what actions, if any, is HCDA willing to take in such circumstances? If HCDA believes there is a specific process, procedure, avenue of review, or communication pathway through which a resident may seek such clarification or review, I would appreciate understanding what that process is and how HCDA believes such questions should be pursued going forward. This has now been an ongoing process for more than 6 months. While I appreciate that these matters can take time and involve multiple parties, I remain hopeful that there is ultimately a path forward toward resolution rather than simply continued uncertainty. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Anyone else wishing to provide testimony, present or online? Seeing none, we will close public testimony. Members, any final comments or questions on this agenda item? Seeing none, we will move now to adjourn this meeting. Thank you to those who joined us on Zoom or in person. That concludes our business for today. The meeting is adjourned. The time is now 10:01 a.m. And members, if we can take a 5-minute recess so that people can use